place.
Yeah.
Now they go to town anywhere. You find them in the mall in this kind of dressing. So you can. How do artists think about this new approach to people? Do they study? Do they, do they
look
do
at
research?
the trends?
Yeah. Do they do research and see how are people behaving? And but also the challenge is that when I was doing a research paper for a German government, and then they asked me about the leisure culture in Uganda, and I could not find statistics. Like, no, it's not there. Even when I went to the Uganda Bureau
of Statistics,
and I asked them, what are the statistics of the leisure? What's the leisure culture in, let's say, for example, in Kampala? What do people spend on? We don't know, and that also helps to inform people who are planning, like the KCCA. They need to know how much people spend in the bars, in the restaurants, on the concerts. What do they eat? What do they like to eat? Where do they like to spend their time between 5 and 6? So that when you're planning the city, you can understand that between this time and this time,
they like to go in this place.
People like to go to this place. Maybe not a particular place, but people like to do this. People like to go to they like this kind of music. So that you have an idea of your city and how people use it. And that's when you're adding into new buildings or authorizing new buildings, you can advise people who are building, not to just build malls and stuff. You can tell them, you know what, according to the trend of people, the way they go out, the way they use the city, the way they engage, these are the things that we would recommend for you to add into your building. You know what I mean? So it's also an issue of research that maybe artists or creatives or even authorities don't put in place first to say that this is how we need people to do. This is where the trend is going. This is how we can help our city, our population to grow. So it's a mix of not being very, thoughtful in the processes, as well as not having the.
People at the moment are struggling to understand the older generation because times have changed. Technology has come in.
They've moved on.
Yes.
We're the ones sitting back and wondering, what is my child on to? TikTok has surpassed WhatsApp. The other one I call, I never call it Facebook, it's Bookface. Why are you on Bookface? Dad, it's Facebook.
Yes.
Me, I keep saying, I have a foot amongst the millennials.
Yeah.
And I understand the traditionalists.
Okay.
There's a song in the 60s, by the way, and the 90s, 70s, where they're like, parents don't understand.
Yes.
Remember Prince?
Yes.
Prince.
Creativity is at the heart of everything we do. Every day we wake up in the morning, we have to think about creating something. You have to think about what you're going to do, how you're going to go about it. What are the problems that you want to solve? How do you turn around the negativity around you by creating a product that will solve that problem. Do you see problems around you? Do you know how to solve the problem? There are people who wake up every day and every single day in the morning to think about the ideas that will change the world. They are called creative minds. Everyone is born with a DNA of creativity, and everyone has the DNA of creating something that will change the world. Are you thinking? Are you creating? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Creative Industry Talk. My name is Eddie Okello, and this week on the program, we focused on the audacity of hope to continue creating, even in this pandemic situation, is something that we are discussing today. My name is Eddie Okello, and my guest this morning, not just a guest, but also a long-term friend, is a creative mind, the man who has been doing it and is a resident panelist on the Creative Industry Talk, back from the outside countries, as we say it in Uganda, and is now here. Faisal Chiwewa, welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Eddie.
How are you, Faisal?
I'm good.
Great, and you've been traveling quite a bit of late. Would you like to tell us the experience of traveling as a creative mind? What are you seeing, and where are you, how are people doing it?
I think, what traveling really helps is it opens you up to new ideas, to see that people are not sleeping, are not worried about yesterday or tomorrow, but they are really thinking about the future. And when you see what is actually surprising, that when you get to the flight, you realize that there's been a lot of changes done around mobility or moving or flying. And it's exciting to see our technology is stepping in. And I realize that there's a lot of new artificial intelligence being used for the safety of the people, but also for the comfort of those who are traveling, to be not so much in contact with other humans. So for me, it's really exciting to see that when you arrive at different airports, you feel like you're managed by robots somehow. And it's fascinating, but also it scares us who are still struggling with the opportunities to work.
Yeah.
I love the idea of creativity in terms of getting work done by artificial intelligence, but also you worry about those that are not able to get jobs, that they are going to be running out. The pandemic has really given us a challenge to see that we are going to be working differently and engaging people differently. So this whole moving around is really, for me, it gives us personally a challenge to start thinking a bit more on how do I sustain my career. Otherwise, I'll run out. I might be replaced by a robot.
Yeah. Wow. We want to just take a moment to welcome every one of you guys all across the world to the Creative Industry Talk. And the Creative Industry Talk exists as a platform for us to have a conversation around the creativity and around the creative minds and how we're creating things that solve problems in the world. Faisal, what a moment right there, from your travel. I mean, I just wanted to ask you a question. Do you see the sense of us failing to get back to where we used to be, where human-to-human connectivity is really very much needed?
There's a yearn of people really, wondering what is better at the moment. It also comes in with the different age groups. Some people who are older enough trying to keep away from other people for their own safety, but those who are young are really yearning to have more people to see, to talk with, as it was before. And it's that conflict, I think, at the moment. But what I think, and coming from an events organizing perspective, I think we are going to be entering into an era of hybrid interaction, whereby we've built an audience now during this period of COVID, our online audience, that when things get back to normal, inshallah, we'll find that we can't leave them alone. We can't leave them out of what we are doing. We have to keep them. They want to keep engaging because we've invested so much in keeping that audience. Yeah. So I think what is going to happen is that we are going to continue with the physical interaction as well as the online engagement of our audience. So there's going to be a very much hybrid version of doing things. Yeah.
Wow. You who are watching the show from anywhere across the world, we want to hear your opinion. Do you think that the world will ever go back to where we used to be? Do you think human-to-human interactions will ever get back to where we used to be? Do you think we're going to have physical contacts again? Hugs, you know? A world where there is no hug, there is no shaking hands would be a very difficult world. Yeah. Even animals relate to each other, and that will be very difficult for us going forward. But Faisal, let's dive into our discussion, from that recap you've given us about your experiences driving and traveling across the world. Today's topic, if we may put the topic up there, is about how do we have the audacity to continue, the audacity of hope to continue creating even in the pandemic situation. And I'm talking about the creativity of us thinking about the things that we need to do. Can you just keep the topic up, team, so that we can just have a moment to recap on that one day. Creative Industry Talk topic today is about the audacity of hope to be creative in this pandemic situation. We're talking about the creative mind. The audacity there is that the ability of a human being to continue thinking creativity, to continue thinking ahead of time, and the hope that if I continue to create even in this pandemic situation, I will still be able to be rewarded for my creativity. I will pay. What are your thoughts on that one, to start with the topic itself?
I think, it's a good thought, and based on the conversations that we've had around from different creatives, there has been a very strong, despite the odds and whatever is going on with the artists, many of the creatives have really continued to create work. So they have had that resilience, they have had that audacity, as you can call it, to continue being, keeping their minds busy at work and developing content. The challenge is, what are we going to do with that content? Because most of it is not, I don't know how it's going to be realized. Of course, there are different processes of creativity or different disciplines for theater, for dance, for music, for film. I think the challenge will be, as much as it is being created, how are we going to realize it? What is the next step of this process of creating work? How are we going to have it shared with the rest of the audiences and the people that enjoy it? But it's a very strong will for artists to continue really working. Not all of them, though. I mean, I think some of them have going through challenges, mental challenges or depressions, and not all art forms are able to create content at home. Others need to be out there in the field, and they can't because they're locked down, they are stuck in their homes. So there is that also balance in terms of, like, those who are able to, the writers are writing, the playwrights are writing, but there are those who have to go into the field and their content is really based on them being out there. They can't, and I think that's a big challenge.
Wow. Faisal, talking of the mental capacity and the mental situation of artists during the creation process, a lot of people are finding it very difficult. They have been in a lockdown for so long, and the creative people are not good at being controlled in a very confined area. Some are running. Yes. How is that going from your interactivity with the artists that you've met all across the world, from the areas you've been since the lockdown started?
I mean, we've been, we are in a very unfortunate situation as a people in this country, because I think whereas the government supports the vulnerables, that those that get the support, I think the creative arts are not really looked at as the vulnerable. They don't have to be, because we are creatives, we can figure out things. But in such a situation where people are really locked down, I think they needed support more than anything before, And I think the confinements that they're living in are very challenging, because most of them, live in shared rooms, shared homes. There is not really much space for them to feel free. There's not also no room for recovery. Sometimes when you are in a situation like this, you need some space. You need to be alone. You need to be somewhere to be yourself, or to figure out things, have your own moment. And some of the places when the way we live is difficult. you have your wife, kids and stuff, and you are all in a two-roomed house. There is no space, and you can't walk, even if you try to go and jog around. So that situation is really making more people, I think, mentally sick. And the other unfortunate thing is that I don't think there's any plan for that. I think we've talked about that before, the plan to help people to get through this mental problem. Like they did in the North after the war. After the Coney War, they had some reconciliation things, they had some treatment centers for war victims. I think we need to treat this pandemic as a war, and we also need to think for the people and say, okay, whereas we are raising money for COVID treatment, for COVID vaccines, we also need to raise money for the after COVID, psychological treatment of people. Not only artists, but also even doctors or nurses or health or essential workers, whoever it is. I think there is that need for to prepare for the people to know that after this, even now, people are going through a lot. And I think it's something that we need to consider, and that's why I think it's also important to be careful with people. When you're engaging with them, don't push people too much, because you don't know what's going on. Some people might have not had lunch or dinner for 2 or 3 days, and then you're there telling them what to do,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow. Well, Faisal, we're going to take a small break, to just, have coffee. But as we take this break, we are discussing the audacity of hope for people to continue creating and being creative in this pandemic situation, even when it looks bleak and, a total dark reality. They are still creating, and we want to come back and have that discussion here with you. And we also want you to get online and actually be part of this discussion. Send us your kisses and disses. We want to know, are you creating? If you're creative, how are you handling the mental state? Are you still creating? If you're not, what are you doing in this time? Are you changing your career, or you're saying, no, I will continue to push my work out? And how are you publishing your work, or how are you getting your work out? Ladies and gentlemen, we're going for a break, and when we come back, we want to hear from you, how you're doing it. This is the Creative Industry Talk.
People at the moment are struggling to understand the older generation, because times have changed. Technology has come in.
They have moved on.
Yes.
We're the ones sitting back and wondering, what is my child on to? TikTok has surpassed WhatsApp. The other one I call, I never call it Facebook, it's Bookface. Why are you on Bookface? Dad, it's Facebook.
Yes.
Me, I keep saying, I have a foot amongst the millennials.
Yeah.
And I understand the traditionalists.
Okay.
There's a song in the 60s, by the way, and in the 90s, 70s, where they're like, parents don't understand.
Yes.
Remember Prince?
Yes.
Prince.
Welcome back to the program. My name is Eddie Okela, and my guest this morning is Faisal Chiwewa, who is the founder and, of course, the artistic director of Bayimba International Foundation. You know, here in Kampala. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
You have been traveling quite a bit, and the first part of the show, you were telling us your experience of what you have been seeing wherever you are in your travel. And the topic of discussion which we want to really dig deep into right now, Faisal, is about the audacity of hope for people to continue creating and being creative in this pandemic situation, even when we're in the lockdown. And we want everybody out there to participate. Audacity of hope to be creative. Are you creating work? And if you're creating work, how is that working out? Where do you publish the work? And Faisal, what would you say to the people, or what would you say to the person who is trying to be creative in this time but does not know where the work should be? Should they continue to be working, by the way?
Yeah, to be honest, I think what the pandemic has really given us, it has gotten some folks out of the cages, out of the shadows, out of their rooms. I've seen folks who have not seen for a long time. They're like having online shows, like they're having talk shows, and I'm like, what?
Yes.
This guy's still there? You know, I think it has really helped because people have sat home. I'm also one of them. Who are like during the first lockdown, I was like, I am not doing anything online. You know, remember? For the whole year, I didn't do anything from March 2020 to March or to May actually this year. So I was like, I don't want to do anything online. But then I realized, why not? You know, I think I still have something to offer. I can do something, and I came out. So I've seen my friend David Kaiser also coming out with Doreen doing a talk show. I see Nabunjo doing a talk show. I'm like, this is actually interesting because people have started to realize that you cannot just sit down. Well, even if you're just creating content for the future, you need to share something. You need to come out and show people that you're still alive. Otherwise, we will think that you were taken by COVID. But also, I think what I realized, like when I was attending a festival in Germany, I think last month, one of the things I realized that was very interesting is that people find ways to get themselves, active. And the most fascinating thing was, like, we attended a premiere of a production, it was a puppetry production that was done by the Bax Theatre, Puppetry Theatre from Cape Town. And they had 35 people who were working on this production. It's a very beautiful puppetry production. It's 2.5 hours. And this production was supposed to premiere at the Theatre de Welt in Düsseldorf. So the cast had, taken the entire people. They had to do the production and then fly to Düsseldorf and then premiere it at the opening. It was the main event, the main production for the festival. They had put in a lot of money. And then I think a week before they were flying out, first of all, South Africa went into a lockdown. Second, they were all tested with COVID. So they could not leave the country. But look, the festival had organized. They could not cancel the festival. They could not cancel the opening. So what they did, they had to stream the entire production, and they had to invest. So it was a whole new invention for them to sit in the artscape in Cape Town, to do the entire production and then stream it live, as they're doing it with the whole new setup of technology, cameras, inserts and all that stuff. And we were seated in a hall in Düsseldorf, 250 people watching a production that is being done live. They didn't have an audience, but we were this way, they were that way, and they made it happen. And we all enjoyed it. I didn't even feel that they were not there. I felt like, because it was a very big screen and we were all seated enjoying it together, they were also doing it. So it was really, for me, a very interesting invention. And I see the future where we are going to go. The hybrid engagement of content nowadays, that we cannot deny people now that we are going to sit back and wait and relax. I think the invention, the new approach to work has to come in with challenges, but also with creativity and innovation and openness and flexibility. So we have to figure out how to continue working.
Wow. Faisal, I mean, this is a very interesting point you're bringing out there. A lot of people who help the creative minds in their process of creativity. And if you're wondering who we are calling actually a creative mind, is the person who think of a problem or sees a problem and create a solution to close the gap that is brought about by that problem. And we're talking about creative designers, people who design marketing and communication posters or flyers, or they put this thing together for you to know the information about that particular product or about that particular brand. I mean, you see billboards out there. There are people who think creatively about how to bring that message to you. And we're talking about people who go into the studio, sit down to write the song, and find somebody with a nice, beautiful voice or handsome voice to actually sing that song and bring it out. Those are called creative people. They think creatively on how best they can bring it out. Everybody is able to think, but not everybody is able to be creative in their process of doing things. Yeah. And we're talking about people who design cars. They sit down, think about how this car is going to look like. Okay, I mean the seats, the driving, the steering wheel, and the tires and all of the things, so that when you sit in this car, you feel comfortable while driving this car. Those people are still creating stuff.
Yeah.
The question is, will the world continue to consume this thing from them if this situation of the pandemic continues, Faisal?
Yeah, it depends on what you're creating and for what audience. I mean, look at what Richard Branson did. Going to space for 1 hour, and now they are opening it up for the rest of the world for $280,000 to go and just spend an hour in space. So I think we can't stop innovating, because the need for products and services are always going to be there.
Yeah.
The need for minds to see different things. We love, as humans, we love color, we love to be challenged, we love to be surprised. So we cannot just, get comfortable with what we know or what we have. And for me, that's one of the challenges I find here. I talked about some time ago about how I'm always surprised to see that we still use the same Tampeco from Mukwano, the same type of Tampeco that we used when we were kids in the 80s, So I find it challenging that they haven't innovated new things, There is nothing new coming out of this company. And when I try to investigate, I was trying to invest, I still want to invest into product design, and not for just clothes or whatever, but I'm really looking into industrial products, and for creative processes, and also the research on that. How do you create products from your local materials? Like the things we have a lot of wood. How can we create products from wood, not just timber for making plastering or whatever, but how do we start being innovative in a way we use products? When you look at people who are designing things for purposes of use, some of them are not very popular, but the thought behind it and the process of putting it out for the public to use it and make it useful, it's very exciting. And I find that really not so much here. We are very much driven by quick things, and that's where the challenge I find. You find people want to make something quickly because they need to survive. We are always in the survival mood. We are always in the rush to make money, rather than sitting down and relaxing. Like the scientists, they sit down, they can spend 5 years looking for a dose, leave alone the COVID one, but people can spend 10 years researching the treatment, and of course it takes a lot of money, a lot of patience, but you come out with something new, something innovative. So here we've not been very lucky to have this, but you also don't blame the people, because there is no support system. When for doctors, they are always supported to, they have research budgets, and they sit down and they are not worried about rent or kids going to school. But for creatives, there is no support system. So you cannot put your life for 5 years researching about new shoes, because you want to put a product out, yet you don't have someone to pay for your rent that day. So this is where the challenges are, and we need to investigate how can we create some sort of structures and systems that are going to help our young people, our creative minds, to be at ease when they are working. I was talking to one of my friend, Goretti Chomhendo, and I was asking her, what are the challenges of writers in Uganda? And she told me that one of the biggest okay, not the biggest, maybe the best gift you can give a writer is space. And I'm like, what do you mean space? Like, yes, she said like space. Get Eddie who wants to write a book, take them to Lunkulu, tell them you're here for 6 months, you don't need to worry about rent, you don't need to worry about food, write, and they will do their job. But they don't have that space here because they're worried about this, they're worried about that, no one is there to support them, no structure, no financial backup. So that's where we are really, really not settled. And then we are hit by this COVID that is not ending. So you find us in a cycle that is never ending with our problems. Yeah.
Faisal, that's a very good perspective right there. I just want to take you to, if there is no one thinking for you as a creative mind, and I'm talking about creativity from lawyers are becoming more and more creative. Lawyers are going to become, they're moving from the traditional law practice as a legal attorney that goes in court to represent a person or an individual, a community, to now cooking food. And they're saying, I need to cook food and I can make very good food. That's being creative, you know?
Yeah.
And the way they present the food, we have a very prominent lawyer right now who is cooking food, and he seems to be making a lot more money from cooking food than the legal practice itself. Now, the question is, do you need somebody, or does one need somebody to give them hope to continue creating because somebody is going to buy? Or you can see a gap in the market like Senson is always doing. He's made open shoes from the tires, used vehicle
Bags
tires, bags from the tires. I find him very creative.
Yeah.
And are there people who will always buy that? Yes. And how much is it? Are there a market for it? Do you need somebody to take you somewhere to create that? Or you can actually have the hope to say, if Faisal is dressing like this, I think I can give Faisal this hope to be able to have this. What do you think?
I think, you know, the difference with professionalism and passion is whereby you find a lawyer who has a, you know, a bar, he passed the bar and he can practice law, and then he's like, I like to cook food, my passion is in cooking. If it doesn't work, he has a backup plan. He will go back to law and study. And there's a difference with the artists. Some of us are not, you know, we studied art, that's it. And that's where we fall, or we didn't study art, but we are doing it. There's not so many backup plans. However, I think what COVID has done has really opened up so many people. I've seen many artists or creatives who are venturing into other opportunities. They're really trying to cultivate other ways of earning revenue. And it's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. But I don't think the issue is like people need to be inspired. Oh, yes, people can be inspired. Eddie, you can inspire people like you do with except me, you failed to get me to the gym. Someone told me today that, oh, Faisal, you go to the gym. I'm like, no. Yes. But you inspire people to work out, to get their bodies physically fit. And that's, it can also be a creative way. But maybe you could say like, if Eddie is doing this gymming and stuff, like what can I create for him to be as an artist? What can I get him to be that is Ugandan, that is me, that can others can start?
For example, by workout t-shirts?
Exactly. And recently, I was talking yesterday, was it yesterday or a few days ago, I was walking around, and then I realized that these days you find many women wearing tight, what do you call them?
Yes,
those tight shorts.
Yes.
Which it was never like this before. You know, women always covered themselves. They didn't like anything. Now you find them on the street jogging with their it's a new way that they are feeling free. There's more freedom and also confidence for women
for whatever they are wearing, which is created by an artist.
Exactly. Yeah. So I really think, and you find they are trying also to find those that are more designing. So it's not even about the body, but it's also about the design of what they are wearing, the formation. And I like it because before, I think 10 years ago, it was very rare to find a woman walking on the streets like this. Yeah. Now they go to town anywhere, you find them in the mall in this kind of dressing. So how do artists think about this new approach to people? Do they study? Do they do
look
research?
At the trends?
Do they do research and see how are people behaving? And but also the challenge is that when I was doing a research paper for a German government, and then they asked me about the leisure culture in Uganda, and I could not find statistics. Like, no, it's not there. Even when I went to the Uganda Statistics Bureau.
Bureau of Statistics.
And I asked them, what are the statistics of the leisure? What's the leisure culture in, let's say, for example, in Kampala? What do people spend on? We don't know, and that also helps to inform people who are planning, like the KCCA. They need to know how much people spend in the bars, in the restaurants, on the concerts. What do they eat? What do they like to eat? Where do they like to spend their time between 5 and 6? So that when you're planning the city, you can understand that between this time and this time,
they like to go in this place.
People like to go to this place.